When I first moved into Willow Creek, I thought I'd found the perfect place to settle down. The streets were lined with tall oak trees, their branches gently swaying with the wind, and every house looked like it came straight out of a home magazine. Lawns were perfectly manicured, flower beds neatly arranged, and neighbors smiled and waved as you drove by. It felt like stepping into one of those postcard-perfect suburban dreams where everything seemed calm, quiet, and orderly. I bought a cozy little two-story house at the end of Birchwood Lane, thinking I had found a sanctuary where I could live in peace. I had no idea that my peaceful dream was about to collide headfirst with the harsh reality of suburban politics, and at the center of it all was one person, Karen. I first met her the day I moved in. She appeared out of nowhere, clipboard in hand, like she had been waiting for me. She introduced herself as the acting HOA president, though later I found out she'd given herself that title. The actual HOA had a board of 5 members, but Karen had appointed herself as their enforcer, judge, jury, and executioner. She welcomed me to the neighborhood with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes and handed me a thick packet of community guidelines. "You'll want to read this carefully," she said, her tone carrying a weight of authority that made me instinctively nod. "We have high standards here at Willow Creek. We like to keep the community beautiful and uniform. It's what makes this neighborhood so desirable." I thanked her, though I was too busy balancing moving boxes to really process what she said. She didn't leave right away, though. Instead, she took a slow, deliberate glance over my driveway, my car, and even the moving truck, as if she were mentally noting everything to file away for later. Over the next few weeks, I settled in and started getting to know the neighbors. Most were friendly enough, but I noticed something strange. Whenever Karen's name came up, people would lower their voices or roll their eyes. Some laughed nervously, while others simply shook their heads. One older gentleman 2 houses down, Mr. Reynolds, warned me quietly, "Best keep your trash cans hidden, son. Karen doesn't like them visible from the street. Says it ruins the aesthetic." I thought he was joking at first, but he wasn't apparently. Karen took the HOA rules more seriously than anyone else, even more than the HOA itself. I'd see her walking the neighborhood every morning, clipboard in hand, writing notes as she inspected lawns, fences, and mailboxes like a general reviewing her troops. If someone's grass was half an inch too long, Karen noticed. If someone parked too close to the curb, Karen noticed. And if someone put out their trash can before the approved collection window, Karen definitely noticed. I figured if I followed the rules, I'd stay off her radar. That belief lasted exactly 3 weeks. One Saturday morning, I woke up to a sticky note on my door in neat, aggressive handwriting: "Your trash can placement violates HOA Section 4.3. Trash receptacles are not to be visible from the street at any time except for pickup day between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. Please correct this immediately to avoid fines." I sighed, rolled my eyes, and moved the trash can closer to the side of the house, assuming that would be the end of it. But Karen wasn't done with me, not even close. I didn't know it then, but that little sticky note was just the beginning of what would soon escalate into a full-blown suburban war. At first, I thought Karen was just overly strict, maybe even well-intentioned in her own way. But the more I saw her, the clearer it became that this wasn't about keeping the neighborhood beautiful. This was about control. And Karen thrived on it. She lived for rules, for regulations, and for catching people breaking them. The rest of us were just pawns in her little HOA empire. I still remember thinking how funny it was one woman wielding so much power over something as simple as a trash can. But I'd soon learned just how far Karen was willing to go to enforce her standards. and by the time I realized what was happening, it was already too late to back down. What I didn't know that day, standing in my driveway with that ridiculous sticky note in my hand, was that Karen and I were about to go to war. And the battlefield my trash can. The first time I found my trash can tipped over, I didn't think much of it. It was a windy night, and I assumed a strong gust had knocked it down. I picked it up, shrugged it off, and went about my day. But when it happened again the following week, same day, same time, I started getting suspicious. It wasn't windy this time, and the can was heavy, filled to the brim. Something didn't add up. By the third week, I decided to keep an eye out. I set my trash can neatly by the curb the night before collection, making sure the lid was secure. Early the next morning, I heard a loud bang outside my window. When I looked out, there it was, my trash can sprawled across the driveway like a fallen soldier, contents scattered across the pavement. That was the moment I knew this wasn't an accident. At first, I suspected raccoons or stray dogs, so I set up a motion detecting camera on my porch. The following Tuesday, I sat at my desk sipping coffee when my phone buzzed with a notification, motion detected at front door. I opened the feed, and there she was, Karen, in broad daylight, marching up my driveway like she owned the place. She glanced around to make sure no one was watching, then gave my trash can a deliberate shove with her foot. It toppled instantly. She dusted off her hands, smirked, and walked away like she'd just saved the neighborhood from a national crisis. I couldn't believe it. Karen, the self-appointed HOA queen, was sabotaging my trash can. That evening, I walked over to her house to confront her. She answered the door with her usual fake smile. "Hi, Karen," I began, holding my phone in my hand like a smoking gun. "I know you've been knocking over my trash can." Her smile never wavered. "Oh, sweetie," she said in a tone so condescending it made my teeth grind. "It's not sabotage. It's enforcement. Your trash can is placed too close to the curb and violates HOA guidelines. I'm just making sure the rules are followed." I stared at her, stunned. "By kicking it over." She shrugged, as though it was the most logical thing in the world. "Sometimes a visual reminder is more effective than a fine. You'll thank me later." And with that, she closed the door in my face. That night, I called a few neighbors to ask if they had similar issues. Turns out, I wasn't alone. Karen had a reputation for being the trash can police. One neighbor, Mark, told me she once dragged his bins halfway down the street because they looked uneven. Another, Lisa, said she'd received 3 warning letters in a single month for unsightly receptacle placement. Everyone had a Karen story and everyone hated it, but no one dared challenge her. She controlled the HOA like a dictator, and people were afraid of getting fined or harassed. I decided I wasn't going to roll over like the others. The next week, I placed my trash can exactly where the HOA guidelines permitted, down to the inch. I measured it twice just to be sure. And sure enough, Tuesday morning, I watched from behind my curtains as Karen strutted up the driveway, clipboard in hand, her eyes locked on my bin. She bent slightly, inspecting it like a detective at a crime scene, then gave it a little push, testing the waters. This time, though, I swung open the door before she could knock it over. "Touch it," I said firmly, stepping onto the porch. Karen froze, caught red-handed, but her expression didn't falter. "I'm ensuring compliance," she said, her voice sharp now, defensive. "This is for the good of the neighborhood." I held up my phone, showing her the footage of her previous enforcements. "Karen, the only thing out of compliance here is you. For a moment, she seemed rattled, but only for a moment. She quickly recovered, tilting her chin up defiantly. "Then take it up with the HOA," she said, turning on her heel and marching away. So that's exactly what I did. I filed a formal complaint with the board, attaching the video evidence. A week later, I got an email from the HOA scheduling a hearing to resolve the dispute. But when I showed up to the meeting, I realized just how deep Karen's influence ran. 3 out of the 5 board members were her close friends, and the other 2 looked like they were terrified of crossing her. Karen sat at the head of the table like a queen holding court, tapping her pen against her clipboard. "This homeowner," she announced dramatically, "has repeatedly violated community standards by placing his trash receptacle in plain sight. I have been acting in the best interest of Willow Creek. I tried to defend myself, showing the footage, citing the exact section of the HOA handbook, but it didn't matter. The board refused to penalize her. It was clear, Karen was untouchable." That night, I went home furious not just at Karen, but at the entire system that let her run wild. And that's when I decided, if the HOA wouldn't stop her, I would. Karen had declared war. And I was done playing defense. The HOA hearing was supposed to be a fair and neutral process, but from the moment I walked into the small conference room at the community center, I knew the deck was stacked against me. Karen was already there, sitting at the end of the table like a judge presiding over a high-profile case. Her clipboard rested in front of her, filled with neatly typed evidence, probably violations she'd invented, and she wore that same smug smile I'd come to know all too well. The other board members sat beside her, and I quickly recognized 2 faces from the neighborhood barbecues, Ellen and Rick, both of whom I knew were Karen's closest allies. The other 2 board members, an older couple named Dave and Marjorie, looked nervous, avoiding eye contact with me as if they didn't want to be caught on the wrong side of Karen's wrath. I felt like I was walking into a rigged trial. "Let's begin," Ellen said softly, flipping through some papers. Karen cleared her throat loudly and leaned forward, seizing the moment like a seasoned prosecutor. "This homeowner," she began, her voice carrying a tone of exaggerated authority, "has repeatedly violated Willow Creek's community standards. On multiple occasions, his trash receptacle has been visible from the street outside the approved collection window, disturbing the aesthetic integrity of our neighborhood." I bit back a laugh, because the way she delivered the accusation made it sound like I had committed a federal crime. "With all due respect," I said, placing a folder of my own evidence on the table, "my trash can is perfectly within HOA guidelines. In fact, I measured its placement down to the inch. What I want to discuss is Karen's behavior, specifically, her repeated harassment and destruction of property." Karen scoffed dramatically. "Harassment? That's absurd. I was simply performing my duties as a responsible HOA member." I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, connecting it to the projector the HOA used for presentations. "Let's let the footage speak for itself," I said calmly. The video played on the wall for everyone to see. There was Karen, marching up my driveway in broad daylight, giving my trash can a firm kick, watching it tumble over, then walking away with a smug grin. A few muffled laughs broke out among the audience members seated in the back, neighbors who had shown up to watch the spectacle. Even Dave and Marjorie shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Karen's face turned slightly red, but she didn't back down. "That's taken out of context," she said sharply. I was inspecting his bin for compliance. "By knocking it over?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "That is irrelevant," Karen snapped, her composure starting to crack. The real issue here is this homeowner's disregard for the standards we all agreed to uphold when we moved here. The board members whispered among themselves while I stood there silently, waiting for anyone to acknowledge the obvious. But when Ellen finally spoke, her tone was cold and dismissive. "While we don't condone knocking over trash cans," she said, carefully choosing her words, "Karen has the board's full confidence in enforcing HOA guidelines. We recommend both parties move forward amicably without further conflict." I couldn't believe it. The footage was clear as day, yet they brushed it off like it was nothing. The hearing was a joke. After the meeting ended, I stepped outside and was immediately approached by several neighbors. One woman, Lisa, whispered, "That video was amazing. We've all been waiting for someone to stand up to her." Mark, from down the street, nodded in agreement. "You're not alone, man," he said. "She's been doing this for years, but no one's ever caught her on camera. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. Karen wasn't just harassing me, she'd made life miserable for half the neighborhood. And while most people were too afraid to confront her directly, they were quietly rooting for someone to finally put her in her place." I went home that night more determined than ever. Karen thought she was untouchable, and for a long time, she had been. But now I had leverage, video evidence, neighbors who secretly supported me, and one powerful motivator: pure, unfiltered spite. I spent the rest of the evening sketching out ideas. If the HOA wouldn't hold her accountable, I'd have to handle this myself. But I didn't want to stoop to her level. I wanted something better. Something smarter. Something that would expose her hypocrisy for everyone to see. That's when the idea hit me: I'd set a trap. Not just any trap, though one Karen wouldn't see coming. Something so perfectly designed that when it sprang, she'd have no way to talk her way out of it. And when it happened, the entire neighborhood would witness exactly who she really was. The war over my trash can wasn't just about garbage anymore. It was about reclaiming peace, dignity, and maybe, just maybe, putting an end to Karen's reign once and for all. And this time, I wasn't going to play defense. The night after the HOA hearing, I sat on my porch, staring at my tipped-over trash can like it was the symbol of everything wrong in my life. Karen had gotten away with it again. The board protected her, the rules bent in her favor, and my video evidence had been brushed aside like it didn't even matter. But while Karen thought she'd won, she had no idea I was already planning my next move. I wasn't going to confront her head-on this time. No shouting matches. No pointless arguments. I was going to outsmart her. If Karen wanted to play games, then I was going to beat her at her own, and I'd make sure the entire neighborhood witnessed her downfall. That's when the idea of the special trash can came to life. I spent hours researching motion sensors, alarms, and security devices online. By the next day, I had everything I needed: a high-tech, motion-activated trash can with built-in surprises. I installed a small hidden camera inside the lid one she'd never notice, and paired it with a motion sensor that connected directly to my phone. But the real genius was in the deterrent, a custom-installed paint burst system. If anyone tried to knock it over, they'd get hit with a harmless but humiliating splash of bright blue washable paint. I called it Operation Blue Justice. For 3 days, I worked on my creation in the garage, testing the mechanism over and over until I was confident it would work perfectly. The final design looked like any ordinary trash can, but beneath the surface, it was a Karen-proof fortress. Trash day arrived, and I carefully rolled my upgraded bin to the curb, setting it in the exact spot allowed by HOA rules. I made sure the camera had a clear view and that the sensor was armed. Then, I waited. Around 8:15 a.m., just as I was finishing breakfast, my phone buzzed, motion detected. I rushed to the window and peeked through the blinds. And there she was, Karen, marching down the street like she owned it, clipboard clutched tightly in her hands, eyes locked on my trash can. I could practically see the gears turning in her head. To her, this wasn't a trash bin, it was a personal challenge, a threat to her imaginary authority. She stopped in front of my driveway, glanced left, then right, making sure no one was watching. Then she reached out and gave the can a push. Whoosh! A burst of bright blue paint shot into the air, splattering all over her blouse, her face, and even her perfectly styled hair. She shrieked a sharp, high-pitched sound that echoed down the street and stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the curb. From my porch, I watched in silence, holding back laughter so hard it hurt. "What the what is this?" she yelled, frantically trying to wipe the paint off her face. Her pristine white blouse was now a chaotic mess of blue splashes, and her clipboard, once her symbol of power, was dripping with paint. The best part, the hidden camera caught everything, high definition, crystal clear footage of Karen in all her glory. By now, several neighbors had stepped outside to see what the commotion was about. Mark from across the street stood frozen, holding his coffee mug mid-air, and Lisa nearly dropped her watering can. Someone even started recording on their phone. Karen looked around, realizing she had an audience, and her expression shifted from fury to panic. "This is vandalism!" she screamed, pointing at my trash can like it had personally insulted her. "This homeowner has violated every..." Before she could finish, the alarm built into the bin went off, a loud, blaring siren designed to draw attention. She jumped back, startled, and that was it. The entire street erupted into laughter. I stepped outside casually, pretending to be confused. "Karen, what happened? Are you okay?" Her face was flushed, a mix of embarrassment and rage. "This is sabotage!" she shouted, stomping her foot like a child. "You're going to pay for this." I shrugged innocently. "I'm sorry, Karen, but my camera shows you trying to knock over my trash can again. I'm just following HOA guidelines, keeping my property secure." I said it loud enough for everyone to hear, and a few neighbors chuckled under their breath. Karen realized she'd walked right into her own trap, but she couldn't argue without making herself look worse. With her pride wounded and paint dripping down her arms, she stormed off, muttering something about legal action as the crowd quietly snickered. Back inside, I checked the footage from the hidden camera. It was perfect, her expression, the paint explosion, the neighbors' reactions, every second captured flawlessly. I uploaded the video to the private neighborhood group chat with a simple caption, "Karen vs. Technology Final Round." By evening, half the community had seen it. Messages poured in, full of laughing emojis, jokes, and even a few congratulations. People who had been afraid of Karen for years were finally speaking up. For the first time, she wasn't the enforcer. She was the punchline. But I knew Karen. She wasn't going to take this lying down. She'd come back, maybe smarter, maybe angrier. And when she did, I'd be ready. Because the war wasn't over. It had only just begun. The morning after the Blue Justice incident, I woke up to find my phone buzzing non-stop. Overnight, the video I'd posted in the neighborhood group chat had gone viral, at least within Willow Creek. By sunrise, almost everyone in the community had seen Karen's blue-splattered meltdown in glorious high definition. Some neighbors sent laughing emojis, Others called it poetic justice, and a few even admitted they'd been waiting years for someone to stand up to her. But not everyone was amused. At exactly 9 a.m. my phone rang. It was Ellen from the HOA board, her tone unusually sharp and clipped. "Good morning," she said tersely. "We need you to come to an emergency HOA meeting this afternoon. There's been an incident." I didn't need her to specify which incident. I already knew. When I arrived at the clubhouse later that day, the room was packed. Nearly 24 neighbors had shown up, buzzing with curiosity. At the head of the table sat the 5 board members, and right beside them was Karen, wearing a stiff gray blazer, her arms crossed tightly. She looked furious but had tried to mask it with a forced air of dignity. Her hair was still stained faintly blue at the tips, despite her best efforts to wash it out. The moment the meeting started, Karen launched into an aggressive speech, her voice trembling with outrage. "This man," she announced dramatically, pointing directly at me, "assaulted me on my own street. He set up a dangerous trap designed to humiliate me and cause bodily harm. I demand that the HOA fine him to the maximum extent allowed and consider legal action immediately." A few people in the audience chuckled quietly, but Karen ignored them, puffing herself up as though she were giving testimony in a courtroom. When Ellen turned to me, I stood calmly, hands in my pockets. "With all due respect," I said, "I didn't set a trap. I secured my property. My trash can has been repeatedly vandalized by Karen and I installed protective measures. I have footage, timestamps, and witness statements to prove it." That was my cue to connect my phone to the projector again. The video played for the entire room, Karen strutting up my driveway, knocking the trash can over, and getting sprayed in a burst of bright blue. The footage showed everything clearly, there was no way to spin it. By the time the video ended, the room had gone silent. For the first time since I'd moved into Willow Creek, Karen looked rattled. Her confidence faltered, and she shifted uncomfortably in her seat as whispers rippled through the audience. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, breaking the silence. "I was enforcing HOA rules. By damaging private property," I countered, keeping my voice level but firm. Section 7.1 of the HOA bylaws clearly states that homeowners are responsible for their bins, and nobody has the authority to tamper with another resident's property without permission. Not even you. That was when Dave, one of the board members who had been silent up until now, finally spoke up. "Karen," he said, his voice steady, "we've received multiple complaints from residents over the years about your overzealous enforcement. This video confirms what many have suspected for a long time. You've been exceeding your authority." Karen's eyes widened, and for a moment, she was speechless, something I thought I'd never see. Ellen leaned forward, adjusting her glasses. "Given the circumstances," she said carefully, "the board has decided not only to dismiss your complaint but also to suspend your enforcement privileges effective immediately." The room erupted into whispers and muffled laughter. Mark from across the street let out a loud, satisfied finally, while Lisa clapped quietly in the back. Karen shot up from her seat, pointing at the board members like a betrayed queen addressing her disloyal court. "You're making a mistake," she cried. "This neighborhood will fall apart without someone keeping order." But this time, nobody backed her up. Not Ellen. Not Rick. Not even her usual allies. The tide had turned, and Karen knew it. She stormed out of the meeting without another word, her heels clacking angrily against the polished floor. The room stayed silent until the door slammed shut, and then, just like that, the tension broke. People started laughing, talking, even congratulating me. Mark came over and clapped me on the back. "You've done what none of us could," he said. "You dethroned the HOA Queen." I smiled but kept it humble. "I didn't do it for revenge," I said. "I just wanted peace and a little common sense." That night, I rolled my now legendary trash can to the curb with a sense of victory I couldn't put into words. For the first time since moving to Willow Creek, I felt like I could breathe. No more sticky notes on my door. No more harassment. No more feeling like I was living under constant surveillance. The neighborhood slowly started to change after that. People became friendlier, less tense. The HOA meetings became fairer, quieter, even productive. Without Karen micromanaging everyone, Willow Creek actually became the peaceful community it was meant to be. As for Karen, well, she kept to herself after that. She avoided me, avoided the board, and even stopped her infamous morning inspections. Rumor has it she's still bitter, probably plotting a comeback someday, but for now, she's out of the game. And as I sit on my porch on trash collection mornings, sipping my coffee and watching my untouched bin sit proudly at the curb, I can't help but smile. Because in the end, Karen lost. And I won.